Hi folks, as promised I'm going to run you through some of the settings that I use to create that time-lapse photograph. It's pretty straightforward, just got to use your brain to think about the environment and what's going to happen while you're there and how it's going to change during the time. So one of the first things I did was set the ISO. I chose what I wanted to do with the ISO. I realised that I was going down there in 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 4:15, it was still going to be fairly bright, and by the time I finished my shooting at 5:45, 6 o'clock, it's going to be fairly dark, so I needed to venture into some of the higher ISO numbers. Now, to do this, rather than presetting it at 1600 ISO to compensate for that on all the early shots, I just set the ISO on auto ISO, and I just set the ceiling height on that at 1600 ISO so that it wouldn't go any higher than that. I ended up deciding that I was going to shoot the white balance on the cloudy setting just to add a little bit of yellow, a bit of warmth to the afternoon of shooting, just so that once the sun started to set and we started to get a bit of pink in the clouds, that the colours would be a little more richer. So that was my white balance setting. The focus mode that I shot in was AFS, so that with a single point I could target it, what I wanted to focus on. The headland might have been half a kilometre away, so I just focused about 300 metres into my shot, locked it on, flicked it onto manual, left it there so that it wouldn't hunt for focus between each of the shots. One thing, that chews through your battery for a start, so if it's on manual and you've already locked the focus, that doesn't even have to use those motors, so it'll make your batteries last longer, and that's an important factor when you're shooting a time lapse, of course, depending how long it is. The next issue I had, of course, was deciding what mode to shoot it in. I thought that if I shot it in manual mode, I could have a bit more control over the aperture and shutter and get the picture that I wanted. But the trouble with shooting in manual is that you'd have to expose for, we obviously want the best part of the picture is, probably the sun's just set, we're starting to get a bit of colour in the sky. So if I expose for that time of the evening, all the shots prior to that would be overexposed and the ones after that would be underexposed. So it doesn't really, I don't like that idea. So I decided to shoot in aperture priority. Probably not ideal either, but I think at the end result it was probably the best way to go. With aperture setting and the ISO on auto, what the camera's going to do, of course, then is adjust the shutter to compensate for the light at each shot. Now, as the shots progress, it's going to get darker and darker, so the shutter speed's going to get slower and slower and slower, of course, so that it can record the image and give you a correct exposure. But that was alright, because I figured that it would get down to, and as it did, it got down to about 1/25 of a second. It was on a tripod, so it wasn't an issue, but I was shooting 800 shots, 8 seconds apart. The worst thing I wanted to do was have it get down into those 8 and 10 second numbers to take a shot, depending how dark it got, of course. So by having the ISO on auto, it slowly climbed up there to keep that shutter speed up in the higher numbers then, so that the duration of the shots wasn't getting anywhere close what the shutter speed was. So it worked out quite well in the end. So after I chose all my settings, of course, I figured it all out at home before I even left. I worked out also my duration of time and how many shots I wanted. When you shoot a time lapse, you want to be able to run it on your computer or on your screen at about 25 frames per second, similar to a video. So you have to work out 25 frames per second, times by the minute, how many hours you want to be there for, or so forth. Anyway, I calculated that I'd need about 800 shots to capture what I wanted, roughly a 30-second video. Over about an hour and 3/4 duration. I worked all that out before I went down. Well, here I am, down at the northern end of Kings Beach. I was hoping that the sun, as you can see, is further over in the west there. I was hoping it was going to set further down the south here near the Glasshouse Mountains to get a nice sunset, but can't have everything. It'll probably be later in the year, the sun will be down that way. So what I've done here is I've set my camera up. The first thing I did when I got down here was choose which lens I wanted to shoot with, just to take in the scenery. I've gone with the 14-24. I've gone, what's that, on I think around the 24mm mark. So not totally wide on this lens, but plenty wide enough. so I can capture the sun up in the top right hand corner of the shot, and then still get a nice view of the water washing in on the waves, Kings Beach down there, main beach, and the Glasshouse Mountains off in the distance. Okay, as you can see, the sun's probably about 5 to 10 minutes away from fully setting. We've got a nice bit of pink in the clouds, nice bit of a glow around Dicky Beach there, not Dicky Beach, Bullcock Beach. So hopefully we'll get a good result from this time lapse. The tide's coming in. It's already soaked my tripod a few times. I've had to make sure I've got up and held it. I'll just show you what's happening here. As you can see, I'm a little close to the edge of where the tide's coming in now. Some big waves coming in, splashing up and possibly knocking the tripod, but I've got a bit of time yet. Hopefully I want to stay for another 20 minutes or so filming. I might be up to my shins in water by then, but we'll see what happens. I've got 712 photographs. I've imported them all into Lightroom. I've made a couple of changes. You know, I've gone in the middle, roughly somewhere around that 400 photos sort of thing, when the sky's got a bit of colour. Alright, so what I've done there is I've synchronised, so any changes I make to one photograph happens to all of them. Basically all I've done is pulled the shadows out quite a bit. They did start as a silhouette basically, so I've pulled the shadows out, remembering that these are a JPEG, and the further you pull the shadow slider, the more they're going to break down, of course, but this is a bit of an experiment, so I'm not too worried about a grainy effect. Right, made slight adjustments to the whites, the blacks, bit of vibrance, maybe I pushed that too far, saturation, clarity. I've gone through, checked my horizon was straight, which it is, so I don't have to worry about that. But really, yeah, I haven't made too many changes to this. Slid the highlights back just a tiny bit, just to take the edge off the early shots, of course, with the sun. I'll zoom back up here. Yeah, with the sun in the shot, fair bit of blowout there, of course, looking straight at the sun. So I've just pulled the highlights back just a tiny bit to just to save that a bit. Now, what I need to do then, of course, once I've made all my changes and synchronised to all the photographs, is go back to the first shot. Oop, back too far. Select the first shot. I've got other files in here, so I can't do select all, but I can slide to the end. Hit shift, lock in, select all the shots. Right click, export. Right. I'm going to just chuck them in a folder on my desktop called Time-lapse, right there, and I'll hit export. I've already done this, so I won't hit that again. It does take some time to export 700 odd photographs, so I'll just cancel out of that, and I'll go close Lightroom up. Now on my desktop here in a folder called Time-lapse is 712 photographs. Alright, but before I do that, what I need to do is open up Premiere Pro. This is the tool that I'm going to use to link all the photos together into a time-lapse video. We'll wait for that to open. Okay, I might just do it as a whole new project. I have done this before, and we'll just call it Time. This is a fairly quick process, so I'll brighten that screen up. Right, okay, so this is Premiere Pro. All I want to do is import these photographs. Go import, find the folder on the desktop, slide across to Time-lapse. Open that folder. Now the trick here is just to select the very first one. So just make sure you're up in the top left hand corner of that box. Down underneath there is a thing called image sequence. If you check this box, when you import these photos, it'll import all of the photos together in sequence. Alright, so it's imported in all of the photos in one batch lot that I can drag into the timeline. Now, you'll see if I bump that back to the start there, we've got about 28 seconds of video. So that's already strung the video together. It's up to me then to decide on the speed of it all. This will be a bit glitchy because a large file that's going to take a while to process, but you can see the effect already happening. Now, what it does is drop the photos into the timeline at basically 24 or 25 frames per second times the 712 shots, so you end up with about a 28-second video. Right, you can see that's not too bad. So one of the other techniques that I've learnt that I mentioned on our vlog was Peter McKinnon, and it was new to me. Now up in the top left hand corner here you'll see scale, position, that sort of thing. You can position your photographs, move them around, move them up and down, you know, slide it left and right, so forth. You know, it's for positioning things in frames. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit the scale one, which is 100%. I want to zoom into it basically. If I can zoom that up to 210%. What I've done is slid the slider on the timeline all the way to the first frame, basically, all the way to the end. I've gone 208%, something like that, whatever's comfortable. And then I'll click on that little stopwatch next to scale, rather. Right, I click on that. Then what I'll do is slide this then to the last frame. So I'll just click that over. Just keep clicking through till we get to the last frame. Oop, there it is. Go back a couple. There's the last frame. And then I'll slide that back to 100%. Bing, right there. Okay, and then I'll press enter. So now when it plays through, it starts in as a zoom. It slowly pans back into the shot. It goes wider and wider and wider, which is an interesting effect. It's not playing smoothly yet, of course, because it's, like I said, it's a lot of files to process. So, but it gives you some idea what it's doing. All I have to do then is finish it off. Just pause. Go sequence, rendering in and out. That won't take too long. 715 shots, sorry. So that's going to take 3 minutes. Alright, so that's now rendered in and out. We'll go File, Export. I've got to click on it. Put it somewhere in there. File, Export Media. Call it something. Change that blue line there. H264. And then hit Export. Now I'm not going to hit export because I've already done that, but I'll cancel that and I'll take you out and I'll show you the finished product. So those, time lapse. Alright, we'll open this up on full screen. View, full screen. Right, and we'll just hit play. Boom, and we can watch that run through. I'll move that out of the way, get it down in the corner there somewhere. But as you can see, as it gets darker and darker, we're starting to get a lot of grain in that bottom right hand corner where it was fully black before in the JPEGs. But I'll let that quickly run through again. It's a very interesting effect. So there you have it. One time-lapse photograph that's probably harder to photograph than it is to process, basically. Takes some time. Got to dodge a few waves and so forth if you want to be down the beach. But what do you reckon? Pretty good. Nice and easy. Hope that helps anyone out there. So guys, I hope that helps you give you a bit of a heads up on what sort of settings you need to do a time-lapse over from day to night sort of thing. So I hope you enjoyed that. Keep an eye out for our next vlog. Cool.